Welcome back to the Amid the Mess podcast, where we talk about health and happiness and well-being amid the chaos that is life as a parent who is working and who is busy and just overwhelmed with everything, trying to take the perfectionist out of everyone. So, today, I spoke with Rebecca Torrance Jenkins, who is a wealth of knowledge about neuroscience and childhood education. So Rebecca has an amazing pedigree of education. I can't even list it all here, but she taught at the Dragon School, which I didn't know what it was, but apparently it's one of the best primary schools out there in the UK. And she has a PhD from UCL, all about how to make the best learning environments for children and how to translate that to make a toolkit for teachers. Well, I'll stop going on about her education, but she takes a lens of anthropology and evolution about how children's brains are developing and how the behaviour they're showing is actually usually age appropriate, but how our modern day lifestyle and environment is just not helping that very much. So we chat all about tantrums, teenage behaviours, how as parents we can support our children as best as possible. And I'll let you listen to the rest. I found it so fascinating. I really enjoyed this chat with Rebecca, and I hope you will too. What's a myth about bad behaviour in children that might need debunking?
That it's always badness or defiance or poor parenting. So often what we call bad behaviour is actually just biologically normal behaviour. It's just happening at a developmentally inconvenient time. So we have to remember that the adolescent brain is a work in progress, and the prefrontal cortex, the bit behind the eyebrows here, which governs things like planning, empathy, impulse control, the whole think before you speak, is still under construction. It's well into the mid-20s. But meanwhile, the limbic system, the emotional engine room, is fully switched on and it's prone to drama. And then you add in dopamine circuits wired for novelty, risk, social validation. And of course, your child is going to slam doors, roll eyes, shout at you for breathing too loudly, and occasionally make baffling decisions involving, fireworks and frozen pizza. But it's not always deliberate. And often it's just overwhelm. It's an underdeveloped regulation. It's the brain trying to wire itself in real time during a stage of life that's inherently turbulent. And yes, it can be exhausting to parent through, but you can pause and you can ask, what's behind this behaviour? Instead of how do I stop it immediately? And then the whole dynamic shifts and you kind of move from control to connection and from firefighting to understanding. Also, sometimes they're just really hungry. Tea and toast. Tea and toast helps.
Hunger has a lot to answer for, often, definitely. That's really interesting. Immediately comes to mind is our 3.5-year-old who currently does this just random outbursts of loud noises. And and I think that's impulse control that you're talking about in the prefrontal cortex. If you want to do a thing, and us as adults are like, no, it's not appropriate to just shout right now. But for him,
actually, toddlers and adolescents have a very similar behaviour pattern.
And that's why they call them three-nagers. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let me paraphrase. So I understand it right. So the prefrontal cortex, the kind of more kind of conscious impulse control, more intelligent side is still very much developing, and they have this emotional, impulsive, dramatic brain fully functioning.
That's right. Yes, but the two the bit behind the eyebrows here that doesn't really mature until a decade later. So there's this gap where it's a little bit like driving a Ferrari with bicycle brakes
and no driver's license.
It takes a while to get in sync. I think that's maybe why Traditionally in the UK, you didn't inherit money till you were 21 because then people thought you were sensible enough not to squander it all. So,
That's very sensible. Very
hmm.
sensible. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your approach. I find it fascinating. Can you tell all of us what is the lens that you use to look at child development and learning?
Yeah, I tend to look at it through a combination of neuroscience and psychology and anthropology, plus the slightly frayed perspective of someone who spent years in classrooms and kitchens with actual teenagers. I'm really interested in what's happening inside their heads and not just what they're doing on the outside. So the
Yeah.
neuroscience gives you the wiring, what's still under construction in the teenage brain, and why they appear incapable of putting their shoes in the same place twice. Psychology helps us understand things like motivation, risk taking, and why they're kind of suddenly allergic to family time. And anthropology gives you the long view, and it reminds us that human brains haven't really changed all that much since the Stone Age. But the world we're asking teenagers to grow up in has changed completely. And our modern Western culture, particularly the sort of American flavor of it, is very, very new in evolutionary terms. I mean, teenagehood didn't really exist in our parents' generation. It's that short. It's fast, it's
Mm.
individualistic, we're hyper connected, and I don't think it's always terribly adolescent friendly. And we've built a world that many young people don't quite fit, and then we act surprised
Yeah.
when they struggle to thrive in it. And sometimes when you
Yeah.
step back and you look at how other cultures raise children, you realize that our version of normal is actually quite strange. And then, of course, as lived experience, you can read all the papers in the world, but nothing quite prepares you for your child asking what a situationship is while you're trying to unload the dishwasher. I had to Google
Yeah.
that, but I think I think that the network, the parent network, is hugely helpful as well.
Yeah, yeah, wonderful. Yeah, so I find all those approaches fascinating, and I often think about the anthropological side of parenting, because just like you have 3 children. Am I
That's
right?
right. Yeah,
Yes,
three.
I have 2, and I'm often thinking about the village that we used to have and the kind of the cave society. Like, how
Mm,
was this originally done? So I love hearing about the situation we're designed for, and then understanding perhaps why these days it's so challenging.
yeah. Yeah, and a good
Yeah.
question we used to ask ourselves when the babies were little was like, what would parents do in the wild? How would they deal with this? And it
Yeah.
probably wasn't the thing that we thought we were supposed to be doing. Like it's fine to
Yeah.
not do something. Yeah, so I often take that as a good reference point. It's very reassuring as well.
Yes. Yes, definitely. And I guess, yeah, I've often thought like, when I've been through the baby stages twice, and now I'm going the second time. I'm still in the baby stage. When I'm feeling quite isolated, I'm like, yeah, people aren't meant to do this by themselves.
No.
We're in a tribe. We have loads
Mhm.
of family and other tribe members around us holding the baby and doing things. So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely. And in
reassuring to
some
know that.
tribes, it's the it's not even the mothers that are the primary carers. The children get swept off with aunties and grandparents,
Mm.
and they disappear entirely at age
Wow.
7 or 14, or yeah. So it's very different. It's
Yeah.
very different to how
Amazing.
we're told we should be doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So how did you land on this topic? Why
Well,
did you decide? What's your story?
I started with a degree in anthropology, and I have to say I became a bit of a geek rapidly. I don't think I missed a
Great.
single lecture. I was completely gripped, both the biological side, looking at our brains and bodies and genetics, and also the cultural side, so exploring how wildly different humans can be depending on where and how they grew up, but also that all cultures share the same few things in common. So all cultures have, for example, a belief system and a currency, etc., etc. Marriage and funeral, they're the same everywhere, approximately the same. But it gave me this very long lens view of development of how much is nature, how much is culture, and how very strange modern Western childhood sometimes is when you zoom out. And after that,
Mm.
I trained as a science teacher and was very lucky to land my first job at the Dragon School, where I was the youngest teacher by quite a long way. And I spent most of the first year quietly
And what is
panicking.
it? What is a dragon school? Sorry, I mean, maybe I'm living under a rock. I don't know what
Oh,
it
it's
is.
it's it's a brilliant school on the edge of Oxford,
Oh,
and
okay. Yeah.
it has a wonderful approach to teaching and education and learning. It's quite old fashioned in the right way. It's almost sort of Greek in that they know the children deeply. When I was there, they got to
Oh,
know the children
lovely.
very well. And it was all about drawing out a child's natural skills and talents and interests. So the proper true meaning of educate, duct, means to draw out. And to fit
Mm.
in there, you had to have some kind of quirky skill. Like the worst thing you could be was boring. And I love that. So they were these fantastic characters, but amazing teachers. And a lot of the teachers there had been there for decades. So they had seen it all. They'd taught, some of them had taught 3 generations of the same family.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I was very lucky. So whilst I was sort of quietly panicking in the background, it was an extraordinary training ground. And at that school, at the Dragon School, they send children on to the best schools in the world, really. So Eton, Winchester, Wellington, Marlborough, all the toughies in this country, but also all around the world. Then I moved to Dulwich, and I taught while doing a research master's, and then later did a bit of teacher training in Sri Lanka, where we learned as much from the local teachers as I think they did from us. And then eventually I found my way into educational neuroscience, and I did a PhD at UCL, around my first
Yeah.
2 children, and then became more and more interested in what was actually going on inside children's brains as they learn, and why
Mm.
some teachers' approaches work so well and others fall flat. And could you codify that and sort of distill it from the great brains, write it down, and then hand it to a new teacher? And then could they then kind of land straight into being brilliant? And since then, I've worked across a good mix of settings. I run a non-for-profit in some of the most deprived areas of the Northwest.
Oh,
We won an
wow.
award for that, which is really nice. We dabbled a bit in ed tech. I set up a new science department at a prep school in Bath, where we won STEM Prep School of the Year 3 years later. And
Ooh.
somehow along the way, I've sort of tried to raise 3 children, which changed everything again, because I got to see school life for the first time from the parent side. And
Oh,
I hadn't
yes.
realised just how central a teacher is to a child's sense of themselves. And, you know, our dinner table was full of stories about what the teachers had said, what went wrong, what was funny, what mattered, how issues and conflicts at school were sorted out by the teachers, and how which teachers the children respected. And it wasn't always the ones that you would think on first meeting. And that made me think very differently about what schools are for and what kind of adults we're actually trying to help children to become.
Amazing. Yeah, it's fascinating. So you've had so much education and professional experience, and then becoming a mother eventually added a whole different perspective on that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
throws lots of the
lovely.
theory.
And I think all the parents listening will be like, "Yep, oh yes, yes." From a parent's perspective, you learn all sorts of things that people who aren't parents wouldn't see and quite
Yeah,
wouldn't know.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I'd love to just kind of go right back to the beginning of a child's life,
Mm,
early development, from a neuroscience and maybe anthropological perspective. How does our
mhm.
care of babies affect the baby's brain, kind of going forwards into the rest of their life?
Well, it quite literally builds them. So in
Mm.
the early years, a baby's brain is growing at a staggering rate. Millions of new neural connections forming literally every second. But the wiring doesn't just happen on its own spontaneously. It's shaped entirely by a baby's interactions with the people in the world around them. So by the way we speak to them, by the way we hold them, soothe them, respond to them when they cry. And when a baby gets consistent, calm care, their brain starts to expect that the world is safe and people are mostly reliable and emotions are manageable. And that's the groundwork
Mm.
really for everything from stress regulation to empathy to learning how to sit still through an utterly boring assembly in year 1. But it doesn't need to be perfect. Like, no one is perfect. No parent is perfect. And the science is quite reassuring on this, actually, because what matters is being reliably good enough. So turning up, noticing, muddling through with some warmth and plenty of eye
Yeah.
contact. And of course, real life is
Mm.
not a child development textbooks. Babies are confusing and adults are tired and nobody always reacts like a trained therapist at 3 o'clock in the morning. But
Oh,
I think even
yeah.
in those messy bit, it's the quiet, small, repeated moments of connection that kind of shape the architecture of the brain. And it's
Mm.
astonishing.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
Mhm.
And the thing you said every second
Yeah,
there's how
millions.
many neural connections forming?
Oh, there's millions. Nobody knows for sure.
What?
And babies have more neural connection, new neurons than adults do.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
a lot of
And I
babyhood,
can see
childhood.
I can see this currently in our 9-month-old baby. One day, to the next day, there'll be a new skill. She'll be doing
Yeah,
something a little bit differently. And I'm thinking, wow, she has just worked on that in her brain, maybe overnight
million
or,
connections.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, amazing.
It is
Okay,
extraordinary.
lovely. Yeah, yeah. So plenty of eye contact and just
Mhm.
calm care. And the world
Just
is a
keep being
safe
there.
place. Yeah,
Yes.
being there.
Leave the mess and the
And
tidying.
yeah, oh, I love that. So you say leave the mess. That's all about what this podcast is actually about. Amid the mess is always going to be there. Do the other important stuff and don't worry too much about the mess.
Exactly. Don't
Yeah.
park your baby in the corner while you do the hoovering. Just leave the hoovering and
Oh,
cuddle your
this
baby
is what I
instead.
need to hear. This is fantastic. Like our floor needs hoovering, but I'm like, no, I'm looking after my baby.
Well, your baby doesn't care, do they? So
Yes. Okay, good. Well, she does she's crawling around. So I'm like, no, don't put that in your mouth. But but anyway, so moving on from the babies, so I'm also interested in a bit further along, so toddlers and young children. You mentioned a little bit in the beginning about the tantrums and the brain. Um, so, well, my question was, why do toddlers and young children have tantrums? You've already explained it a little bit, but is there an evolutionary purpose to that at all?
I think it's like teenagers. I think they happen because children's brains aren't yet wired to manage big feelings. So their emotional
Mm.
systems are fully up and running, but their ability to regulate those emotions, the bit that says, yes, but let's not scream about this in Waitrose, is still developing. And they literally can't calm down on command. It's not their fault. They're not behaving badly. They just can't do it. So the best thing you can do
Mm.
is stay calm, say as little as
Yeah.
possible, and just kind of hold the boundary kindly. Don't
Yeah.
escalate, don't overtalk, and definitely don't take it personally. So I think if you can
Yeah.
imagine yourself as a calm lighthouse in a storm, that's the right mindset. And the worst
Hmm.
thing is trying to reason with them when they're mid meltdown or shouting
Mm.
back, because both those things tend
Mm.
to make things louder, longer, more public,
Yeah.
and then everyone ends
Yeah.
up needing a nice biscuit.
Yes. Okay, so actually, and it's, I mean, when you're in the heat of the moment, it is so natural to want to reason and shout and like, that's not okay. But actually, it's really, really remembering you are the one with the full brain. Like, you need to
Mhm.
act like you have a good functioning prefrontal cortex and stay
Yes.
calm.
Yeah, one
Yeah.
of my
Yeah.
favourite books, which I thoroughly recommend reading, is called Hunt, Gather, Parent. It's by Michaeline Duclef, and
Oh,
she's
nice.
a parent who goes off. She's lives in America, and she decides to look at how much older cultures look after their babies. And there's this lovely scene where she goes to live with some Inuit people, and her 2-year-old is screaming and shouting at her, and she's shouting back, and then this elderly lady comes over and says, "You're just shouting at your child. Like, I'm going to take your baby away from you while you calm down because you are making it so much worse." So she takes the child, the 2-year-old, away and just sits a few hundred meters away, calms the baby down. And the author herself said, "It's for the first time I realised that actually what I was doing was, I mean, I'm the adult here and I'm screaming and yelling at a 2-year-old, telling them not to scream and yell." So yeah,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
taking time to
I
be
know.
calm, be the grown up.
And And no judgment to anyone listening because we all slip now and then. Life is
Of
stressful. This
course,
does happen.
of
But it's a
course.
good reminder actually, like
But actually,
yeah,
it's the follow-up
yeah.
that matters. So we've all had that thing where we've ended up shouting and yelling,
Mm-hmm.
and the research shows that that doesn't do any harm. But what's really brilliant is when you say 5, 10 minutes later, "I'm really sorry I shouted. I didn't mean to. I just got very frustrated, and I'm feeling calmer now." And that's a really, really important lesson to show
Oh,
a child.
fantastic. Fantastic. That's brilliant to hear, because we all slip up. It's, it's
Of
no
course.
one's a saint, no one's Mother Teresa or the Buddha. So yeah, so afterwards just make sure you very obviously apologize and
Yeah.
explain and talk about the emotions you were feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's
That's
hope.
one of the most powerful
Fantastic.
lessons you can teach.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. Would these meltdowns have happened in a traditional society? How would it look
Well,
differently?
I think they would have done, but not quite in the same way that we see them today. Because in many traditional societies or much older cultures than our own, young children are raised in a much calmer and slower paced environment. And they tend to be surrounded
Mm,
by extended family and community. And they're included in daily life. So they're watching, they're helping, they're copying. They're not constantly overstimulated or told what to do like every 30 seconds. Adults model behavior more quietly. There's probably far less direct confrontation. So I think, yes, children definitely still get upset. They're human, but there's less of the full throttle supermarket floor meltdown that kind of we've come to expect
mm,
as being normal in our culture. And I think there's
yeah.
also a lot less pressure on one exhausted adult, usually the parent, to manage
Yes.
everything. Because in those communities, someone else might quietly step in, or the child might simply be given a little bit of space. They're not ignored, but neither are they the sort of emotional epicenter of the household either. So, no,
Yeah.
it's not that tribal toddlers are magically better behaved. It's just that the whole system is set up to reduce stress, not to amplify it.
That's amazing. And there's not as many deadlines. Not like, oh, we have to be at preschool at 8 o'clock.
Oh,
Quickly
the
get your
deadlines.
shoes on. None of that
Yeah.
time
That's why
pressure. And
holidays is so magic, because you don't have the deadlines. That's what we try, and our holidays, we try very hard to get rid of all the deadlines. But yeah, I
this
swear
is
it's the
a
deadline that makes modern life so tricky.
this is really good knowledge for me going forward, because I'm a timekeeper. I have like this internal clock, and it's good to know that going forward with the two children, actually it will be very beneficial. Like when we can in holiday times, to really just let
Take
go
your
of
watch off.
timings and
Yeah.
go with the flow. Much better
Mhm.
for them.
Mhm.
Thank you. Noted. So, all right. So let's see. Moving on a little bit to teenagers. So I'm sure
Ooh.
there'll be people listening with older children, teenagers, and that's a whole different ballgame. You might be getting more sleep by that time, but there are other challenges. So why do teenagers start doing such risky and quote unquote stupid stuff?
Well, and I'm saying this with a caveat that next month I become the parent of a teenager. So this is probably the last
Ooh.
month where I know about teenagers. So I'm going to go with it now. So based on the research, first of all, it's not stupidity. They don't do stupid things. It's developmental neuroscience in action. And actually, and I will explain this, so let me get to this, but it's a really successful evolutionary strategy. And again, it just doesn't perhaps quite work in our culture. So, adolescence is the most dangerous phase of human development, not because teenagers are broken, but because they're newly strong, they're newly mobile. And in our cultures, they drive around in cars or bikes, and they're wired for risk at precisely the moment that they're not really that great at regulating it. Like I said before, it's a bit like somebody being given a Ferrari engine but only half installing the brakes. The emotional parts of the brain, the limbic system, which loves and craves novelty, excitement, and peer approval. That's really important to teenagers. They're all fully switched on. But again, the prefrontal cortex, which does things like planning and impulse control, it doesn't really finish developing until mid-20s. So they feel grown up, but they aren't yet consistently capable of making grown up decisions. So hence the late night
Mm,
joyrides, the dares, the staircases. But there's more to it than just this biological lag. So risk taking isn't a design flaw, it's actually built in for a reason. It might look dysfunctional to us, but it doesn't mean it's maladaptive. So if taking a social risk helps a teenager climb the social ladder, even if it involves doing something reckless or deeply questionable, to them the payoff might be worth it from a reproductive fitness
mm.
point of view. So risk becomes a strategy. So imagine you're a 16-year-old and you sneak into a bar to impress a more popular group. To you, the benefits are status, inclusion, access to future mates. That might by far outweigh the costs, at least in the short term, even if the parents
Yeah.
at home are quietly having a heart attack. And
Yeah.
this is why giving more assemblies on how to make good choices, it rarely has the desired effect. Teenagers are making choices, but they're just using a very different set of risk calculations to the ones that we would.
Mm.
So it might
To
be
them, those
really
are
alarming.
good choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if your son decides age 14 to climb on the school roof and risking his life, but everybody below is cheering him on and whooping, and he's suddenly shot up the social status ladder, for him, it was a great decision because he's going to come down off the roof and suddenly have inherited this whole new access to influential people, to future, to mate, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So our job
Wow.
is kind of to keep the scaffolding in place whilst they learn what risk really feels like. And yeah,
Mm.
ideally stop them before they try and do anything too crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's all so true. It just makes me think about when I was a teenager and kind of
Yeah.
the why I did some of the stuff I did. And looking back now, I'm like, what? But yes,
Yeah.
it would have been for social status and for kind of impressing people, and yeah, very
Yeah.
much. And now I think, oh my goodness, I understand why my mother was so worried.
But
So,
there are
but
some brilliant ideas. I've been researching and looking into tips from real life parents. And one of the best I had
do
is when
tell.
your children are out late at night, you've given them a curfew, and you might be having a sleepless night, thinking they've got to be back by 11 o'clock. But I don't want them to race, or are they going to be okay? I'll better wait up. She said she sets her phone alarm in her bedroom doorway for 10 minutes after the curfew. So the child comes home, reach through the door, and they quickly turn the alarm off. And then the mother carried on sleeping. But if the alarm goes off, she knows she's got to go and find her child. And I thought that's such a great tip.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, perfect. Nice. And she's communicated that to the child. Like
Yeah.
this is the situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
This is why I
nice.
worry. This is how we can stop my worrying whilst you get what you want.
Yeah.
And there's an element of safety in there because she's going to go out looking for him, at 10 past 11.
Yes. Okay, perfect. And so that's a good strategy. What are some of the worst things a parent could do with the well-being of the teenager in mind?
I think getting too heavy, too strict, taking everything personally, trying to
Mm.
control them. As soon as you try to control a teenager who is craving a sense of agency and self-directedness, then they're going to push against that.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't take things personally. If they're moody, if they withdraw or they slam the door, none of that necessarily means that something's gone wrong. It just means that their brain is busy doing teenage things, testing limits, recalibrating identity, forgetting how to say good morning. And it's also unhelpful to treat them like a kind of security threat. So if your relationship turns into a sort of surveillance operation, all that will
Yeah.
happen is they'll just get better at hiding things.
Yeah.
And they don't need perfect parents, they just need consistent ones. So someone who remembers that, like, beneath the eye roll and monosyllables, there's still a child learning how to be an adult,
Yeah.
one questionable decision at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's really good advice. I'm not there yet. So we have a 3.5-year-old and a 9-month-old, but this is stuff for the future. Absolutely. Um, and if our almost 4-year-old is anything to go by now, he's got a will, a very strong will. So
Good on him. Good on
yeah,
him.
good
No
on
one's going to
him.
push him around.
No, oh no, oh no, very extroverted. So moving on to kind of the modern day kind of environment, all the stuff that is available. So technology, we've got social
Mm.
media, we've got iPads, we've got everything. Um, what is your take on the influence of all of that on our young people?
Well, it's complicated. Technology isn't going anywhere. It's
No.
there. And for young people, it's where, for them, a lot of exciting things happen. It's where they learn, it's where they joke, where they flirt, fight, compare themselves, build their identities, and sometimes dismantle them again at 2 a.m. while doom scrolling. But the challenge is that teenage brains are wired for the reward, the social comparisons, and the emotional intensity. And social media is also wired for reward, social comparison, and emotional intensity. But it's really not a great match. It's a bit like giving a Labrador a lifetime supply of sausages and being surprised when it eats the sofa. So some of it's fine. Some tech is brilliant, but some of it is quietly corrosive, especially, I don't know, for girls navigating body image and self-worth. Platforms like OnlyFans take this to another level. I was talking
yeah.
to a teacher at an all-girls school who said that some of the girls she teaches who are so well behaved, they appear so in control, so sensible. They were monetizing performances on OnlyFans. So one of them was shaving her legs on camera. Someone was paying her to film herself shaving her legs and sharing these videos. And to her, it was a really sensible way of earning money. She said, "It's so safe. I don't have to leave the house. It's great. It's better than working in a bar." I mean, what a
Yeah.
complex conversation to unpick
It's a
there. And
slippery slope, isn't it?
it is.
Very
And I mean, it's
slippery.
disturbing. It's pervasive, and it plays directly into a teenager's need for validation, autonomy, and, we said social standing. So where's it going? And honestly, I think the tech will get smarter. The platforms will get sneakier. I think the young people will keep being the first to absorb the impact. I think that the generation that are age sort of 16 to 26, that decade, had the hardest time of it. The people policing the internet didn't understand it. Now I think we're much better.
Yes.
I think our job isn't to ban everything, although the odd 11 p.m. confiscation doesn't hurt. Our job is really to stay close enough that they'll still talk to us when something online goes from fun to terrible. And maybe occasionally we should remind them that their future self might not thank them for the content that their teenage self thought was perfectly fine at the time,
Yeah.
without freaking them
Yeah.
out. It's very difficult. It's complex.
It is. It is. And so that's teenagers. What about much younger children? Do you have a view of kind of keeping technology away from young children as long as possible, or what would be the age that's appropriate for phones and iPads and all that stuff?
Well, I wouldn't give a child a smartphone in primary school at all. And primary schools support this, so that makes our job a lot easier. They didn't used to, and now most secondary schools don't allow phones in school either. So I think that's given parents a huge break. When I
Yes,
was
that's
doing my
great.
PhD research in 2011, I was working in 2 secondary schools, and they would ask children to bring their phones out. They would share links. The children were using their phones for the calculator, the measuring tool. They were using them all the time. And thank
Oh,
goodness we've
yeah.
moved on from that. But nobody realised, nobody thought through. So I think, of course, a bit of TV is great with little children, especially if you've got nice programs like Bluey and Octonauts. I think they're brilliant. I think that there's a place for tech once children have been taught how to use it. We're very lucky in that our eldest child is not really that interested in social media. In fact, a lot of the time the battery's dead and we can't get hold of her. So we're quite lucky there, but other children have secret accounts, and some children say to me, "Oh, miss, I don't tell my parents, but I'm on this site." And then it's a bit of a tricky dilemma. So, do you tell the parent? What can you do?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
as a parent, keep the door open to communication, because it's much better that they're on those platforms and you can help them than they're on
Yeah.
those platforms and they think they have to keep it a secret. Or you could ask
Yeah.
your wider family to be their friends on various social media platforms and say, "Fine, I won't be, but you have to be friends with
Yeah.
your older cousin or your aunt, and somebody else can help keep an eye on
Mm.
them."
That's a good point. So if you can't stop it, you can get extended family to just keep an eye.
Mm.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that. I
watch
like
out for
that.
the secret second accounts that they also
Oh,
always set up.
yes. Oh, crazy, crazy world.
Mm.
But so we've talked a bit about schools, and you are very
Mhm.
much involved with teaching still.
Mm.
So what in your background anthropology, neuroscience, really understanding what's going on in the brains of young children and teenagers, what would, say, starting with a primary school, what would the dream
Mm.
primary school look like? That maybe was a
Oh,
bit different from how they are now.
I would start straight away. It's a complete no-brainer to me with how the brain actually learns. So if I had the luxury of somebody saying, go and design the perfect school, the dream school, or as close to perfect as we can make it for our children, that's where I would start. So here is a brain. We know it learns like this. We know that children thrive on this. That would be my starting point. It wouldn't be the curriculum. Oh, how can we deliver this many hours of science, geography, history, etc. It wouldn't be about timetabling. It wouldn't be about rooms. We've got these guys in this room and they're having lunch at that time, so we're going to have to shift year 7's PE lesson. It would start with the brain. And then this is a luxury because I know a lot of schools simply can't do this. But I wouldn't pile on more content, but I would create the conditions where learning thrives through novelty, curiosity, agency. So that's having a bit of input in what a child does themselves, self-direction. And I'd
So
give
they
them
get
the
to choose
relationships.
kind of what they
Yeah.
want to study. Okay.
Exactly, to choose a little bit more, because when you take choice away from children, I mean, that's what you do to a prisoner, isn't it? You remove all their choices and it's a form of punishment. And children feel that keenly, some much more than others. My children in particular have to have as much agency as possible. And when they buy into something and they believe in it, they think it's a great idea or they see the benefit, then they'll go. But as soon as I sit down and say, you have to do this, they switch off. I think a lot of adults are the same as well.
Yes, we all have
Yeah, and
natural
then it's
resistance.
relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah, relationships that feel really safe. So I'd want to walk into a primary school classroom and feel that sense of buzz of children who are genuinely engaged. They're not just busy. And
Yeah.
I would also make sure that teachers knew the children deeply, not just the child's reading level or their SAT score, but how that child thinks, what that child really cares about, what makes them light up. Because when children feel known and connected, they learn better. Their brains are literally more receptive. And there's even some neuroscience showing that in well-attuned classrooms, students' brain waves begin to synchronize with the teachers. So it sounds a bit like magic, but it is measurable. If they feel a connection with the teacher, you get synchronicity of brain waves and learning improves. And I have to caveat this with, in the vast majority of classrooms I'm in, you do see the teachers spending a lot of time, care and effort really getting to know the child. And good teachers are doing all this anyway. But I would cut back on worksheets. They can be useful, yes, but they can also be a bit soul sapping. I'd rather give children real problems to solve, real ideas to play with, or something that feels like it's worth doing. So play would be central. It wouldn't be a break from learning. We're going to learn and then play. I think play would be part of the learning. It's again I'm using inverted commas here, the wild. Humans use play as their most powerful learning tool. And I'd want the whole community involved. So the grannies from the village who come in and knit or bake with the children. This happens at a school near us. It's so wonderful. The neighbours who come in and teach gardening or carpentry or storytelling, because that's how humans have always lived. In mixed age groups, passing on knowledge by doing. And this is not radical. This is deeply familiar. And finally, well-being would not be a bolt-on PSHE lesson once a week. It would weave into absolutely everything, from how we transition between lessons, how we resolve conflict, how we treat each other. So it would be the kind of place where children and staff actually want to be.
Yes. Yeah. Wonderful. That sounds dreamy. And, it does actually, so we're talking about a school, but a lot of what you said sounds very much like the nursery that our eldest goes to. And so that is the kind of care that, nurseries are different. I think we have a really good one, but it is the kind of thing that staff of nurseries give to very young children. And then somehow the expectations seem to change as children suddenly go to school. But exactly the same approach, the deep knowing and the caring and the emphasis on the kindness and the sharing and all the values should just carry on.
But it's not the teachers. This is what it's really tricky. I think that the teachers I work with, I'm working with over 12 schools at the moment, the teachers are brilliant. This is absolutely
Yeah.
not a criticism of the teachers. And
Mm.
if I was given a class of 30, 15-year-olds and had to teach them double physics on a Friday afternoon, it would be really difficult, really, really hard. So I have enormous respect for teachers. But I think the conditions that the teachers have to work in aren't ideal. And I think the system could change.
Yes, it's system. Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
It's often in this world, it's always a system thing. Most humans always want to do the best they can possibly do, and they always care for the people they're working with. But yeah, it's an organizational level thing.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
so with the school system, how it is at the moment, the kind of standard schools, primary and secondary, what is a way that we as parents can support our children as best as possible if the current system is a little bit challenging for them?
I don't think you need to redesign the curriculum from your kitchen table at home, but you can just buffer wherever you can. So a standard conventional school can be really rigid. So at home, if we prioritise flexibility, humour, rest and connection, that would really help. Let the children play, don't overschedule, let them explore, make
Yeah.
mistakes, let them be bored, talk to them like they're really interesting. Defend sleep like it's sacred, and remember, the most
Oh,
powerful learning doesn't always look academic. It often happens over toast or on a walk or when nobody's trying too hard.
yeah.
I'm just thinking there of secondary schools, and a parent said to me recently, "My child had a wonderful time at primary school, but within 2-3 weeks of starting her senior school, she was criminalised." And I, said, what do you mean by that? She said they were treated as criminals. They had to carry around a rule book in their pocket at all times. And if they were asked to go to the loo in a lesson, they'd get a signature. If they weren't wearing their blazer, they'd have a signature. And when they'd
Mm,
accumulated 3 signatures, that translated into a detention. And she said her child has gone from loving school to being really, really, fearful and anxious, and she was worried her child was going to switch off. At the moment, the child is anxious, but if she carries on living in a kind of anxious state, it's quite likely that she'll switch off and stop caring.
yeah.
And we had a really great chat about, okay, so what is the school doing? What is the point here? And going back to your question about how do we design the dream school? I think in secondary, I'd start with the question, what are we aiming for? Because no boss I've ever met requires staff to sit in rows on identical hard chairs, wearing a restrictive, itchy jacket, filling out
Yeah.
worksheets that get stamped and then just filed away, and saying to you, you have to ask permission to use the loo. And no adult is punished with enforced silence and isolation because they can't concentrate after lunchtime. It's really bizarre when you look through it at it through that lens. And we're supposedly preparing children for the real world, but much of what we ask them to do wouldn't last 5 minutes in the modern workplace. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think we should give children a lot more agency and a bit more autonomy.
Yes.
And I think we should trust teachers a lot more. The teachers I see are brilliant, and the best systems in the world, from Finland, Japan, Singapore, they really invest in professional expertise and collaboration. And as a consequence, they don't micromanage every lesson from a spreadsheet. They don't observe them. So I think in my dream school as well, I'd not only prepare the children for the real world, but I'd also give teachers a lot more time to plan, a lot more of their own agency, and stop
Mm,
micromanaging them. It's lovely. At the last school I went to, I asked about I asked the head, how do you kind of keep track of what your teachers are doing? Do you ever observe lessons? And she snorted at me with derision and said, God, that would be the worst thing I could do. If I went in and observed my teachers' lessons, our relationship would break down, the trust would go. And that was really interesting, because at my most recent school, we were observed regularly by the senior management team, and it doesn't build trust; it erodes
no.
trust.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think everybody more agency and prepare them for the actual real
Yes.
world.
That's amazing because like I said, most human beings want to do the best that they can and they deeply care. And so you don't need to be observing them to make them care. Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. And how
fantastic.
incredible if somebody said, we're going to design a system that gets thousands of children, hundreds of thousands of children every year to stop loving learning. You then kind of look around, walk through a year 10 corridor and think, wow, how many children have I talked to when they said, we just want to get through school. Once we get into the real world, then we can do all the things we love. And it's really
Oh,
sad, isn't it?
yes, because actually, when you are a teenager, that's such a great time of life because you don't have to worry about finances. You don't have to worry about other stuff. You can actually focus on building your brain and learning interesting things
Mm,
and socializing and all that stuff. So that should actually be some of the best years.
yeah.
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
could be. And
interesting.
it is for many teenagers, I'm sure. But
Yes,
too often I
yes.
have the chat where they tell me, oh, I've only got 18 more terms and then I can get out.
Oh, that sounds like prison, doesn't it? Oh,
Mm,
oh, crazy. Great. Oh gosh. Okay. Well, okay, so you've got this dream school in your mind and it sounds amazing, but a very important thing is teachers are amazing. Teachers are all
they are.
doing their very, very, very best. So
They
this is
really are.
no slight on any teachers.
No.
Yes. So I'm now curious. So I really want to. I like keeping it real in this podcast, and
Mhm,
everyone I interview has so much knowledge and interesting stuff to share. But we are all human beings, and we all have imperfections.
mhm.
So, if you don't mind sharing, either what's one of your imperfections as a parent, or maybe in the past, what's maybe one thing with your children when they were younger that you think you may have done a bit wrong and now you know a bit better?
Well, there's many, many, many things that, well, I don't think we've done wrong. I know we've done wrong because our children tell us. So
Okay.
we've got quite frank feedback on our parenting in this house, which is great. But if I had to pick one, it goes back to a conversation you and I had just before we came on air, talking about bedtime and naps. It would be bedtime. So, and this is what I mean. Hands down, bedtime. I used to really worry that we were doing it all wrong because I would hear friends and my family talking about their children being in bed by 7 p.m., pajamas on, teeth brushed, but ready to sleep. And then they would drift down to light the fire, open a bottle of wine, and actually watch a film, the whole film. And I remember turning to my husband and saying, damn them with all their perfect bedtime routines. We really did try everything. I'm not going to bore you here, but we really, really did try.
I
Um,
believe you.
Meanwhile, our children would still be fully alert at about 9:45 p.m., asking for toast, starting a crafting project, asking to start a crafting project, or reenacting the scenes from Matilda. And I used to nag, I used to reference sleep research, I used to list all the studies linking early bedtimes with brain function and well-being. And even my mother rang me up saying, I've read some research about how important it is that children get enough sleep, which then made me feel even more guilty. And I knew she
Oh,
was
all the
right,
mum
but what can we
guilt.
do? Um, but I've since recently had an epiphany, and I've completely reframed the evenings. And I now calmly tell my husband and the family that we get hours more time together. So we get more time talking and reading and joking every single evening. And I did the maths. That's about 2 hours a night, which adds up to about 14 hours a week. And over a year, that's basically a whole extra month of parental input. So I am treating this as like a win for us. And
Yes.
on the upside, my children can now nail a dinner party. So they'll top up drinks, they'll entertain everybody, and they stay very cheerful until about 10 p.m. without blinking,
Oh,
which is more than
yeah.
can be said for some adults, maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. Oh, interesting. So you've relaxed the idea of the children should be in bed at 7 p.m.
yeah, they
Yes, and I
just don't
think
do
that
it. It doesn't work.
no, and it's children have different like circadian rhythms as well, I'm sure, and it's
Mm.
also cultural because I think in England it's a bit more about the early bedtimes than it is in the Netherlands, where I'm from. So
Yeah. So what's
my
a typical bedtime in the Netherlands?
well, you see, I don't really know. I'm a bit of a strange Dutchie. I am Dutch and I speak it, and my parents are Dutch, but I haven't lived there. So I've gone there a lot every year to visit family, but I've never properly been integrated in the Dutch society. But my parents do tell me that we used to always go to bed way later. So I do think, and some of my
And
Dutch
you
friends
turned out
also,
fine, so that's good.
I'm fine. And our almost 4-year-old is also, we're lucky if he's asleep by 8:30. It's been a good
So
night.
familiar.
So so just relaxing a bit and kind of shifting the mindset, and actually you get more time, precious time with your children before they don't want
That's how
to spend any
I'm
time
now
with
seeing
you.
it. Yeah, exactly. More
Yes,
time together. Aren't we
yes.
lucky? Yeah.
We always reenact Octonauts in bed. So it's like,
Uh, yeah,
can we
or
talk
Friday
about
night dinner, is
Octonauts?
it? Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Um,
So to close this conversation, can you
mhm.
tell the listeners where they can find out more about you, and any services you might offer if they would want to know about you?
Yeah, well, I run neuroscience and psychology workshops for schools. So I do inset sessions, parent talks, that sort of thing, all focused on what actually helps children learn and thrive. I also work as a consultant at the moment with charities, with an ed tech company, and occasionally very worried parents. And everything I talk about is grounded in research, but
Yes.
always with an eye on real life families and real classrooms, the slightly messy, slightly chaotic kind. And I'm a
Mm,
bit hopeless with social media and promoting myself, but I have got a website, which is drtorrancejenkins.co.uk.
perfect.
And I
And
think
I
it's
will
the same
put that
tab on Instagram.
in the show notes as well, so people can easily find you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Now
Mm.
you have the perfect level of experience. You've got all the scientific background, and then experience as a teacher, and experience as a parent. So it's like lovely triangulated from like all sides. So you
Well, I
know
hope
where.
so. My good friend Grace said to me, just show me the science and then how I can use it. And I've taken that as a real mantra, but put a dollop of using other people's successful tips and tricks and techniques as well. So trying to build a bit of a portfolio. And I'm really hoping to pull together a book. And this would be based on the many brilliant, panicked and occasionally baffling questions parents have asked me over the last decade. So fingers crossed, do keep an eye out for that.
Amazing. I want to get my hands on that book. So do keep me
Thank
informed
you.
when that book comes out, and I will get you on the podcast again to talk about that book. Definitely.
Thank you so much.
All right, Rebecca. Well, it's been such a wonderful conversation, so much to process and to try and apply to real life parenting. So thank you so much for your wisdom.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
That was a Rebecca Torrance Jenkins, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. One thing I'm going to take away is really realizing at home that our almost 4-year-old just doesn't have the fully developed prefrontal cortex. And I think there was maybe another part of the brain she mentioned right at the front that we have as adults. So not to expect adult reasoning from my 4-year-old. So that was me. And I hope you have some takeaways as well, no matter what age your children are. Maybe they're teenagers. Maybe the school bit we talked about is more relevant for you. If you have any teacher friends, perhaps send this their way as well if you think that would be interesting for them. But before you leave, please, please, please give my podcast a little rating and review. It's super easy and quick to do on whichever app you are listening on. That would be so helpful. Thank you. So for now, I'm going to love you and leave you, and you'll hear from me again with a fresh new episode next week. Bye.